So you can pick out memorable team moments, storylines, positive and negative, because we cover it all here. No rules, all authentic, unrestricted. Who wants to start with a good one first?
We'll let Kratz go first.
Okay.
Well, thank you. How are we not talking about team accomplishments? I know it didn't work out well, but the Yankees in the World Series. We talk about the fact that this team is, the most World Series victories of all time, all this stuff, history. They didn't make the World Series for a long, long time, and they finally made it this year. I know, Game 5, they fell flat on their face, but they were there. To me, that's great for baseball.
You know why the Yankees made the World Series? Because it's one of my things. The AL was this year. Okay? I mean, the Yankees had – people said it. They had – listen, this is nothing – it is a knock on the teams. But the Astros were this year, right? And then they had to play the AL Central, who the Yankees have dominated since the AL Central came into existence. So, to me, it was just like, how bad was the American League this year? I know the Tigers had a nice run. The Royals made a nice run, made it to the postseason. But the team everyone was expecting, and most of us picked to go to the World Series, the Houston Astros, were this year. Had a down year, didn't have it. Their pitching wasn't as good. Their bullpen wasn't as good as we expected. They didn't hit as well as we expected. They had injuries. I get all that. But, man, just how bad was the AL, which allowed Kratz's team, the Yankees, to get to the World Series. It was a down year for the American League, and I'm an American League guy.
You know who had a big year? The AL Central.
I just said they all stunk.
Yeah, but they got 3 playoff teams in when before the season. I was one of them. I'm like, yep, bad division. Because you just start to get it in your head. You're like, oh, bad division. Well, no, it actually
and
got
one of them won the
better.
Twins, who a lot of people thought would win the division.
Exactly. The Twins actually, I'll put these two together. The Twins collapse and the karma from the way that they were run from the very top, right? Build up for a while, make it to the playoffs, win a playoff series for the first time in a billion years, make a ton of money as a franchise off playoff money. And then the owner's son or whatever, right? Joe Polad's like, yeah, we're going to have to trim the payroll. So they did. They lost depth. They lost some of their pitch. I mean, everything. They lost depth. They lost their soul, and they collapsed down the stretch. And then more of the same for the season after that. So the best thing that'll happen to the Twins is if they get sold ASAP, they are for sale. So if you know anyone, call a friend, get in touch with them. On the other side of that, the Detroit Tigers, wow, what a comeback. Nobody saw them making the playoffs up until the last few weeks of the season. It was crazy. It was so crazy that there was, you didn't see that in July when they traded away Jack
Flaherty. I picked them at the beginning of the season to make the playoffs. I picked them at the beginning of the season. Go back and look at the notes.
I know you did, but August 10th,
not in July.
Did you see the Tigers making it?
No.
Yeah, exactly. They trade away Jack Flaherty. Obviously, they got a guy in return in Sweeney who was a big part of the team right away, but nobody saw this team doing what they were doing. Javi Baez somehow got even worse, and this team got better. This Tarek Skubal, who we talked about in the other episode, outstanding. By far one of the easier AL Cy Young picks. But credit to AJ Hinch for getting this team to where they got to, right? They even won a playoff series. You talked about Houston being a little down. The Tigers beat them. I know it's a short series. You get punished for not being a bye team, and they weren't, and they ran into a hot Tigers club that took them down.
Agreed. But you know why the AL Central had 3 teams make the playoffs?
Why?
Because they had the worst team of all time in their division, and they beat them up and beat them up and beat them up. I mean, the White Sox had the most losses of all time.
Yeah,
I know percentage-wise they because of the game thing, but they had 121 losses, and I believe the Tigers only lost 1 game to them, the Royals only lost 1 game to them, and the Guardians had the rougher time, still won the division. But those teams got into the postseason because they got to play the worst team of all time, and that's the White Sox.
Mm-hmm.
So we're talking about all the good and listen, they had to beat them, but the AL Central was propped up because of a really historically awful team.
Yeah. Some players complained about that. They were like, hey, they have the White Sox in the division. I'm like, okay. Everybody's had that in the past. The Orioles were terrible for a while. Teams beat up on them in the AL East. The AL West has had their share of crap at the bottom of the division too. So everybody gets their time period where they're playing against a very bad franchise. I get this team set a record, but there's been plenty of 100+ loss teams that have swayed how the win-loss record looks. And also, we have less divisional matchups, so at least it's a little more fair now. I do love the schedule change that MLB made. It accomplished two things. It made you a little bit less division reliant, and it gives more variety for fans. You get to see more teams against your ball club, especially when you're home, right? You want to give home fans an opportunity to see Shohei Ohtani show up at their ballpark. We were at a time not long ago where you'd have to wait years. So I like that a lot. I'll throw another one out there while we're talking about the Twins needing to be sold. What about the Orioles getting sold? I think it's going to be big for the long-term implications of that franchise. And it's not just what you will see ultimately with player transactions, but behind the scenes, there were a lot of corners being cut with Baltimore, right? Michael Elias had to balance the budget of even international scouting. The previous ownership group didn't really believe in that. So they just spent no money on it. That's insane. Imagine one huge piece of your prospect cupboard is just neglected. You can't do that. So huge for Orioles fans to have a new group that's going to come in and be a much bigger part of what's going forward and kind of supporting the team. So that one was big for me. I'm actually going to kick it to you for the next one, AJ, because you did a great job with the Fox team covering the Mets and the Phillies series. But that was a shocker.
After, we all know Juan Soto signed with the Mets, but one of the leading factors of that is the Mets made it to the NLCS. They made the playoffs. They had the OMG thing. Well, guess what a guy like Steve Cohen wants to do after that? He gets the taste, right?
Mm-hmm.
He wants the whole thing. So he's like, how can I get to the next level? I go out and sign Juan Soto. So the Phillies losing to the Mets, not that it was the impetus for it, but I'm sure that it didn't hurt Steve Cohen thinking like, if we get Juan Soto, we can take the next step, which is to get to the World Series. So the Phillies losing to the Mets, I'm sorry, Kratzy, and the way they did it and the way they beat them and the energy in Citi Field and the OMG and the whole deal they had going on there with Grimace and Pete's, what did Pete have? The little mushroom? What was it? A mushroom or something? Whatever.
The pumpkin.
The pumpkin. Sorry. They had the pumpkin carrying around. Yeah. I mean, they had so many gimmicks going on, so many skits, but the fans bought into all of them. And so for me, because the Phillies lost to the Mets and the Mets beat the Phillies, the Mets then are going to try and take the next step, which is signing Juan Soto and making other moves to try to move to the next level.
Might be the best division in baseball now, the National League East. And super surprised, super unlucky this year is all the Braves injuries. 2023, the Braves were unstoppable. I think they had 7 of the 9 starters, or they had 8 guys in the All-Star game. Like, they had historic seasons from everybody on that team. This year, Ronald Acuna goes down. Austin Riley goes down. Spencer Strider goes down, to name the big guys that went down for a majority of the season. And yet they still made the playoffs. I get it on the last day playing that doubleheader game, but it was amazing that they made it. But it was amazing how many injuries they had and how many down years they had, and they still made the playoffs.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to wrap with 2 more, one positive, one negative. I mean, Oakland fans didn't deserve what happened out there with the A's, and I feel bad for Vegas fans if that owner is going to be running things out there. So hopefully that changes. It's just a baseball problem to get someone like that out of the sport. He doesn't like the sport. So hopefully that gets fixed. On the other side, you want a group that cares? Dodgers ownership. They put it all together this year. They've been a dominant team for a long time in the regular season. They want more playoff wins. They got themselves a little Shohei Ohtani, and they didn't stop there. They made brilliant trade deadline moves. Tommy Edman, what he did in the playoffs, incredible. Built a really good bullpen. Dave Roberts had his best managerial performance in the playoffs. Watching him for years, kind of have to play a lot of chess, and this year especially, they're down and facing elimination against the Padres in the DS, and they're able to come back, and then, of course, they win it all. So props to them, and the team looks like could be even stronger. So anyway, if we missed anything, let us know. If you're watching this afterward, you know how to find us on socials. Look up Foul Territory Show. In most cases, Twitter's Foul Territory TV because they limit us on characters. But anyway, Happy New Year to everyone, and we'll be right back.
Be sure to like and subscribe for more content.
We're back here every weekday, all year long, so do not miss an episode.
The videos are coming in all day. Here's another video you might enjoy.
Baseball the way it should be covered.